Hello, hello, everybody. Right on cue, my tornado siren test is going off in the background. Just listening to the little siren test happening. I remembered this time that the tornado siren test would happen as soon as we started this presentation. So I'm not surprised to hear tornado sirens in the background this time, but welcome to March's Core KPI webinar. We'll go ahead and get started. All right. So just a little bit of housekeeping stuff. There isn't necessarily a chat format in these webinars, so feel free to post anything in the Q&A. If it makes sense for me to answer it during the presentation, I will. Otherwise, we'll answer all questions at the end as well. So I'll go ahead and get started. Tom's here as well. I just noticed that it was showing you on camera too. So
Wow. Okay.
just be
That's not necessary, but I'll try to, if we do that, I'll try to behave myself.
there we go. Just giving you a warning. You're on camera.
Okay.
Okay. So, um, for anybody who has not been along this webinar series with us, my name is Aja Holiday. I am the Partner Success and Training Manager at Made Central with actually that's going to be updating to customer education and training. So very close, but little shifts here. I've been with Made Central for just over 2 years, just a couple of weeks past, or yeah, a month past 2 years. So over 2 years, and I've been using Made Central for 5 years or something like that. And we are doing this series just kind of on the core KPIs within Made Central and picking a core KPI of the month. So this month's KPI, this month's KPI is close rate. Before I get into that, I do want to show, sorry, this tornado siren test is much longer than normal. Usually it's done by now. I'm very distracted. We do have two events coming up where these KPIs also are used and talked about. The first one is Foundations 13. That is March 16th through the 23rd. So we're in that kind of last week to really sign up for this if this is something that you're interested in. Many people say this, but Dawn gave me a nice little clip just yesterday that it's honestly the best training program that she's ever experienced, and she is coming again this year as well. She said that she went last year. It was life-changing, and she is ready to hit the next level of it and go to it again. So I will be there. Tom will be there. It's actually Tom, Liz, and Liz Trotter and
Ola,
Olu. I don't know. How do
August.
you say August? It's just August. It's just a fancy spell of August. Okay.
I think he's making it easy on us. I'm not sure exactly, but
Anyways, so
that's the way he
it's
tells us
a
to pronounce that.
it's a really amazing education event. It's a whole week, very immersive. Essentially what you could learn in a 6-month heavy intensive program is pushed into 1 week, all, living together. I'm very excited about it. So if you have any questions on this, oh, I got a comment that it's hard to hear you guys. Is anybody else having issues hearing us?
You're doing well. I mean, you sound fine on my end, but
Okay,
I'm
the tornado
sure.
sirens did just end, so I think
We could not hear I could not hear any sirens.
okay, cool. I wasn't sure if my Zoom's usually really good at cutting out background noise, so I didn't think that it could hear it, but hopefully Marina, if you're able to maybe turn off and on your speakers, that might help a little bit. But if anybody else is having issues, please let me know. We can try some things. It sounds like it might just be a one-off. The other event that we have coming up is in just over a month. And that is our next Made Central Academy Live event in just outside of Washington, D.C. It's a 3-day event from April 10th to April 12th. It is being co-hosted by Lilian Lima, who is the owner of Skilled Maids. And this is our kind of go-to live event for our Made Central team. Again, Tom and I will be there with other members of the Made Central team. And it's a really great way to kind of learn how to use Made Central better, but it's also not just for people that are Made Central partners. We go over a lot of data tracking, similar things that any business would need to know in our industry. whether you're using Made Central or not. So if you have any questions on this as well, we can answer some of those too. So I'll go ahead and jump in on
And on the
our core
front end
KPI.
of
Oh
this
yeah.
meeting, just so everybody knows, there's going to be an ISSA residential regional event on April 9. That's the industry's only nonprofit trade organization formerly known as ARCSI or ARCSI. And there's going to be a whole day of education there at Lillian's office as well. So if you wanted to make a 4-day event out of it, you could come to the ISSA event on Tuesday and
Yes.
then be with us Wednesday through Friday of that week.
Perfect. I forgot about that one. I'll add that. I'll add that next time for sure. Um, awesome. So I think that covers all of our events. We'll talk about these at the end too. So if you guys have questions that come up throughout it that you need to ask, that we'll talk about those at the end as well. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So here's our agenda for the day. We'll kind of go over what the core KPIs are, what is close rate, why it's important. Some of these topics we talked about a little bit last month. So if you were here last month, you might be getting some refresher, but you also might get some new things here as well as we talk about how do we quote and sell things. Really understanding follow-up processes and different methods that we can use to have really successful follow-up, and then just some additional tools and resources followed by a general Q&A for any questions that we're not able to answer during the actual presentation. So what are the core KPIs? Well, Made Central has identified 3 key performance indicators, KPIs. Did I say 3?
You did.
Sorry.
You're testing us to see if we were
I
paying
was also
attention.
testing
And
myself. Have identified, um, that's so funny,
well, how many
15.
are there? How many core KPIs are there?
There's 12 plus 3 constants is what we call them. So there's 12 core KPIs, which make up our core KPI calendar, which Tom's gonna wave over
Oh, yeah,
here
that's
for
how I
everybody.
remember because we made a calendar. So there's 12 KPIs because last time I checked, there's 12 months in the year and it works out quite
Weird.
nicely.
Worked out really well. But these are the key performance indicators that can be used to measure and drive your business and margins into the directions that you want them to go. It also gives us the ability to really understand the industry benchmarks around these KPIs to know where we have the most room for improvement. Anything that's really far from maybe an industry standard or benchmark has that much more room to grow into something that's capable, into a number that's capable of being earned. I don't know if earning is the right word there to get to in this industry. So this month is our close rate per week. We're doing a core KPI webinar each
First Thursday of the month to
first
Wednesday.
Wednesday of the
I was
month.
testing you.
We're doing a
Yeah.
lot of testing over here. Um, so we've already done bill per cleaning and quotes per week. Next month is going to be cleanings per home per month, and we're just kind of working our way through the calendar through the year. The numbers that we're kind of starting with are the ones that we want more of. Those are our numbers that we're increasing. So everything in this first half of the year, we're really working on bringing that number up. And then the second half of the year, we're focusing on numbers that we're kind of driving down. So they're not good numbers and bad numbers, even though we use red and green. We just want more of the green things and less of the red things within reasonability. Oops, there we go. We will also be using some of our Made Central growth tools that we have. If you have not already created a profile on here, feel free to do this. It's a free tool to use. You're able to plug in your own numbers, get some forecasts on your own business for the next year, for the next 10 years, also being able to kind of compare what your numbers might look like if you do make some of these changes and are able to improve your results by a specific percentage. So we've got our profit planning tool, which is kind of going over how price increases can affect your bottom line. Our growth forecaster is really looking at if you continue doing things the way that you're doing them now, what will this look like in 10 years? You know, are you still in a growth section of your growth curve, or do we need to make some changes to keep things from leveling out? And then the last one is the growth comparison tool, which also takes the same our core KPIs from the growth forecaster and allows you to say, well, what if I improved my close rate per week by 25%. How would that change? Is that something I should be focusing on? Is that a number that will really help us in the long run? And that's what the growth comparison tool lets you do. All three of these are accessible at corekpi.madecentral.com. Feel free to make an account there. It is a free account for anybody, whether you're a Made Central user or not. Made Central users do have a leg up because we give all of our Made Central users all of their core KPIs in their own dashboards. So they could just plug those things in as they need. You can also save these tools. So you can create maybe a forecast on the growth comparison and say, all right, this is situation A, that if we focus on these KPIs, this is what we can do. And then you can save that one and make another one and try some other KPIs. So it's really great for strategic planning purposes if you are not already using these tools. So what is the importance of close rate? And what are we talking about when we're talking about close rate per week? We're really focusing on our recurring sales when we're talking about close rate, because with our growth forecasting tools, we understand that there is a level of one-time sales and one-time services that make up our overall revenue. But as far as predictability, knowing, how stable our numbers are and the stability of the business in general, recurring services is that's the core of all of those. So when we're talking about close rate, we're talking about how many recurring sales did we get from the quotes that we administered. So it's the total quotes that you give each week and how many of them become recurring customers. At the end of the day, your close rate reflects your ability to effectively convert people into ongoing paying clients. So your close rate on your recurring service really affects that stability of your business over time. And it's really important to track recurring business separate from your one-time business when forecasting out into the future. One-time business is stuff that you're just kind of hunting down every single time that you do one. They all have the same level of work, and it doesn't always pay off in the long run in terms of, if you do a lot of work for a recurring service at the beginning and then you have them for 5 years, you don't have that same level of work that has to be given every time that you clean for them. So I think we can all agree that recurring work is the goal here. So what is your close rate? We talked about it's the total quotes you give each week and how many become recurring customers. In equation form, this is going to be your total recurring sales number divided by your total quotes number, all during the same period of time. You can look at this on, I think our core KPIs labels it as close rate per week, but close rate can be measured in lots of time frames. So as long as you're using the same time frame for the recurring sales and the total quotes, you are getting a viable percentage to use in our forecasting tools. I do give you guys our first quartile number, which is 37% close rate or higher. So of all of our Made Central partners that have good quoting data, 37% is where the top 25% of people are closing or higher.
That's a pretty good number.
It is, and it's actually gone up. So that's one that I've noticed. I want to say our first quartile was, it's definitely more, this one's more fluctuating than most other KPIs. Because people can do a lot of things to really change this number really quickly.
Yeah.
New salespeople can have a really big influence on this number. So it feels like a more volatile number than some of the other KPIs, depending on the timeframes that you're looking at. But I do remember maybe like when we first started pulling core KPIs across everybody, that number was closer to like 20%, like 25%, something like that. So getting up closer to that 40% range, I feel like there's been a lot of movement on the success of people selling recurring services.
But Michelle has a question, is that
Yes,
in,
it's quote to sale.
okay.
It's going to be a recurring quote to sale percentage in Made Central. Good
Yeah,
question.
the number of quotes you get per lead, that's a whole nother metric and very important number, but for this purposes, we're assuming that you're giving a quote and we're concerned about how well we're doing it and executing and we've been doing May Central Live for a while now. The one that we've got coming up in April is eighth, ninth time we've done that.
I've lost count. That's
Yeah.
how many times we've done it. I no longer have the count.
And we spend a lot of time on our action plan, and now we're doing it for 3 days, even longer, talking about ways that we can move all these KPIs, and we demonstrate how much just making modest improvements in this one KPI here makes a big difference in the amount of revenue you generate and the return on investment you're getting off of your marketing and sales efforts. And I think that we're seeing where people are taking that information, going back home with it and making changes to, for their benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been, I think it'd be really interesting to see some of these numbers over time, particularly since our Made Central Live events have been happening. The funniest one to me was the uh bill rate increase.
The rate increase shot up like a rocket.
Yeah, the bill rate, there's this really our graph of bill rate over time is hilarious, where we see where we started helping people do rate increases, and that bill rate just like went boop,
Every,
like we're right away after the first couple live events. So Kim, does it filter out what Kim asked, does it filter out one-time quotes? So just those that request a recurring quote. In Made Central, it is, I
it's all
believe it's
quotes.
counting all quotes.
It
It will not
is.
filter those percentages as far as quote to sale recurring and quote to sale one time.
Hmm.
They have the same quote number that they're using. It's just
It-
saying of these quotes, this percentage became recurring, this percentage became one-time sales, and the leftover percentage didn't become a sale.
And that's a good question, Kim. And the reason for that is a modest number of quotes arguably have no opportunity to be anything but, one-time clean. I'm selling my house and moving across the country, and I'm selling it to somebody who's going to turn it to an Airbnb. I don't know. It could be an outlier where there's relatively no chance of turning it into recurring sales, but we believe that most
Oops.
sales opportunities, most quote opportunities have the potential of becoming a recurring sale if we go into it with that expectation. You're going to get more recurring sales rather than if we establish with our sales team, separate the two. And if they say one-time service, don't even try to talk them into recurring sales. We believe that you can create more value in yourself by starting with the presumption that everybody it wants recurring service and make them talk us out of that rather than the other way around.
Absolutely. All right. So we talked about this a little bit last month as well, but why do we quote? What is the whole purpose of this? So there's a purpose on the customer side and there's a purpose on the business side. On the customer side, it's to receive a price, it's to understand the expectations of what will be completed, and it's starting that relationship, building that relationship with a customer. It's probably not even the first step of building that relationship. There's probably something in the marketing that brought them to you to begin with, and that's really the first part of that relationship. But this is kind of that first back and forth dialogue part of the relationship building, where they are part of the conversation and they're not just receiving information, they're also being able to give information and making sure that what they're looking for is what you're able to give. On the business side, it's setting an allowed time. That's kind of the really big important part of this. Making sure that you have the right amount of time and are charging the right amount of money for that time, for the work to be completed at the level that you want it to be completed. Um, and this is really also setting that allowed time is based on your shared expectations with the customer of what that scope of work is, what will be completed, to what level will it be completed, and how long does it take to get to that level of expectation. And then taking that time and using your hourly rate that you need to be earning to assign a price for the necessary hours. So for a lot of people, this might still look like this, where, we're taking a range of square footage, assigning a dollar amount to it or a time to it, maybe, and then using that, and that's what we're giving as a quote. Um, this is this is a tool that was very useful at one time, but we really have kind of moved beyond this with technology. So um, you definitely want to bring, oh, why is this not? Bring things kind of forward into 2024 and leave pricing off of a table like this in the past, essentially. So quoting is a continuous improvement process. It's something that you shouldn't just lay on paper and hold on to that for a really long time. You really want to take into account that lifestyles change, people change, the way that we use our homes change. COVID being an obvious one of the last, 5 years, that working from home changes how we use our homes. How people are, some people are homeschooling and things like that. Not so much anymore, but it's still a change in how we use our homes and how we need to quote for them. So making your quoting process a really continuous improvement process is kind of important. On the technological side, it lets you do things systematically, taking in more factors into account. On a chart of square footage, we really get the only factor that we're taking into account is the square feet. When we add technology to it, we're able to take into account pets, people, types of rooms that are being cleaned. And then we're also able to use the times that are completed on those jobs to compare. All right, so this is what was quoted, and this is the time that it actually took. What do we need to adjust in our quoting process to get closer to that actual time in practice? That's a lot harder to do on an analog quoting method. It's really unlikely to update something when it's sitting on 6 offices computer walls and everybody just looks over and points at a number, and that's a number that it's been for the last 10 years, and that's a number that we're going to stick with. But we're not making those adjustments over time. It's just kind of we're staying in the same place. You also have limited factors. We don't have columns for every single option here. We don't have, 1,500 square feet, 1 pet, 1,500 square feet, 2 pets, 1,500 square feet, 3 pets. That would be a really, really, really big table. But those are things that we would probably want to take into account when we're quoting. It helps us set those expectations a lot better with our customers when we're able to take into account all of the factors that change how long it takes us to clean a home. And then just some things I've been helping people set up their quoting tools in Made Central for 2 years now, and just some things that I've noticed with these tables of square footage and times is there's just some really funny things. We see kind of arbitrary square foot groupings where you might have some consistency where they're all jumping at 500 square feet, and then, oh no, we missed 1,000 square feet. So for years now, people have been, deciding, okay, I'm just going to use the one below it, or I'm going to use the one above it, and just kind of making a decision, even though the table isn't actually telling them what to do with that number because it got forgotten in creating it. And that's kind of the gaps, and also just the ranges can be really funny. Sometimes they're 200 square feet, and then the next one's 1,000 square feet, and there's a bigger difference between those, and it's hard to dial in when you're using a table like that.
You
Oh,
know,
thanks, Heather.
yeah. What's Heather telling
That's
us here?
awesome. Heather just said, I was so stressed moving from my quoting piece of paper to Made Central. Now I can't imagine quoting without Made Central. I love that because I know that we struggled a lot in the beginning in kind of dialing that in together. And I love to hear how much you can't imagine quoting without it at this point. That is absolutely fantastic. That's the goal. And to know that you can go in and adjust things and change it over time, and you're not beholden to that, is, I think that's really cool. I'm really proud of you, Heather. That's really awesome. All right. So what makes a quote right? Well, the first thing is do not start with price. You do not start with a number amount. This is an iterative process. You want to calculate how much time do we need. That time is based off of those factors that we've been talking about, based off of how you clean, based off of what type of work they want to have. a really super deep clean versus a general clean versus a tidy up. Those are all different scopes of work that need different amounts of time. In the same aspect, we have what price do we need to charge per hour? There are lots of things that go into this. The three that I mentioned before, as far as what types of clean it is it a deep clean, a regular clean, or just a dust and tidy clean? Those involve different levels of supplies, different levels of education on your team. So they might need different hourly rates on them, on top of how much do we need to pay our technicians, and how much needs to be left over on the business side to pay for everything else. So there's a lot of things that go into that hourly rate, and making sure that you have that dialed in first, or second, actually. These all happen simultaneous, maybe. And then bringing that on to the last one of what other factors do we need to consider? You know, how do we, on top of the time that we need to reach the expectations of our quality standards, what other factors do we need to take into account to keep meeting those standards, and to make sure that we're setting the right expectations for our customers as well? I think that's these three things coming together is really what we want to do when we're quoting, and making sure that when we give a quote, that we're not going to have to make major changes right away on our customers, because that's a really big part of this process too. So let's talk a little bit about some sales tips. I really liked that I sometimes, before I worked in this industry, the idea of doing sales always just had this little connotation of sleaze. Like, it just was like a banner that crossed behind my eyeballs and just said sleazy, because that has just been the impression that I get about salespeople, or that I used to have about salespeople. And then I started doing sales in cleaning industry, and I realized that I just wanted to help them, right? Like, I felt that they would benefit so much from this that it turned into a conversation. And that's the way that you want your sales to be. There's no sleaze needed. There's no, bait and switch needed. There's no need to hide anything. And actually, the more upfront and honest that you are, the easier it is to sell. So we actually I found some really interesting stats while I was looking up on this. I was really curious about AI. People have been talking a lot about AI in sales. I'm not going to go into that right now, because that could be a whole hour-long webinar on its own. But there were some really cool AI studies that were completed recently. So the first one was Talk Less, Listen More. Gong.io is an AI program, analyzed over 20,000 sales conversations. The average salesperson spoke 65 to 75% of the time. However, their top closers barely spoke over 40%. So you're not the main person talking in a sales call. The prospect is. They are the ones with the problem, and you're the one with the solution. They're coming to you because they really want to be heard. In the same aspect of this, don't rush through the conversation either. A different AI tool, but similarly numbered sales conversation studied, found that the top performers in sales calls had 78% longer conversations. They are able to engage longer with their prospects, and probably a little bit more in depth. And this is something that I used to laugh about, because I wasn't able to do sales permanently, because no matter what, anytime that I did a sales call or was doing a quote call or anything, it would be 30 to 45 minutes. I could not make it shorter than that if I tried, because all of the things that we wanted to talk about, that I wanted them to bring up in the conversation, it took that long to get that level of trust built. I also had like a 90% close rate on the sales calls that I did do, because I took the time for it. It's not feasible to do that all the time, so there's definitely a balancing act that has to happen here, but it still shows that the longer that you can kind of have that conversation, and the more that you can allow them talk in the conversation, the easier it is to kind of convert them.
And
Um,
you mentioned earlier about, the steps in the process, and detailed scope of work being one of the things that we want to get out of the process, and that gives you an opportunity to ask more questions. I know a lot of people quote by square footage, because square footage is a little bit easier and it's a little bit quicker. I know some of our our larger partners and ones that do a really good job with sales will quote by rooms, and that's a more detailed scope of work. And um, I think it also kind of sets the expectation, the presumption that you're going to be a recurring client by the time you get through all of that. But that falls into the reversible decision category. It would be something that I would encourage everybody to play with and see if you could get better results by trying to quote by rooms. And if you do, it's a really awesome way to not only get a better conversion on your sales, but you also have better work instructions for your cleaning technicians. So if done well, you're going to get better results, better scorecards, better lifetime value out of your customers, and your technicians like it more as well because they've got more information about the home that they're cleaning.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the third part of this is acknowledging the elephants. Um, this is, I'm calling them elephants, but really it's when you hear the prospect kind of hesitating, pulling back a little bit, having kind of, there's definitely, we've all heard it, we've all felt it. There's like a moment where you can feel that hesitation hit. They're not ready to pull the trigger yet. Acknowledge that. Don't gloss over it. Hey, I'm feeling some hesitation here. What concerns do you have that I can help? Give them an opening to share an unexpressed concern. Something that maybe they just don't know how to bring up, but give them that opening to at least ask it, or, tell you something that they might be worried about. So don't gloss over them, acknowledge those elephants. Don't let them, take up all the space in the conversation to the point where you can't move forward. These last two kind of go together, but first one is focusing on the results, not the process. There's definitely aspects of our industry that we do have to focus a little bit on the process, the tools that we use, the safety of our supplies. That's some part of the conversation that has to happen. But really what we want to focus on is how is this going to impact their life specifically? What are they going to get back from this beyond just a clean house? What's the important part to them? Why do, they obviously have a desire to do this, to have a clean home, first of all, but they might not realize all the other effects that they might experience by using your business. So keep it kind of a brief, high level sort of process pitch or a results pitch. You don't need to go down into the nitty gritty of we're going to use these tools on these areas and this here. They are coming to you because they don't want to clean their home. So they don't necessarily need the by and by of how it's going to happen. There are some people, we all can think of at least one customer off the top of our heads who wants to know every little tiny piece of the process, but that is not the majority. And it's definitely not the thing that's going to make most people feel like they're ready to move forward and with your services. I really liked the idea of what will they have, create, be, or feel after choosing you. So there's lots of ways that we can do this. You're going to be happy, or you're going to feel free, you're going to have more free time. Like, those are all parts of the conversation that you can bring in to help them understand what they're getting out of this. And then personalize. And this is an interesting, I really wanted to go into a little bit more of this at some point, so maybe that'll be another webinar. But personalize is an interesting concept in the sales process, especially as you're growing. It's very easy to personalize your sales process when you're smaller and you are maybe the owner and also the only person doing sales. As you get bigger, that personalization becomes a little bit more difficult if you're still doing things really analog, if you're still making every single quote, one at a time, or using a very basic template. When you have the right technology that you can really pull additional personalized information to, you can make things feel really, really personal on a much higher scale. So using emails that are personalized to what was quoted, using videos to introduce yourself again or to remind them who you are before even getting to the quote. There's lots of ways that we can use technology to help personalize things as our processes get bigger. Awesome. Any questions on these sales tips?
I'm
Cool.
going to go back to the detailed scope of work again on the personalization, because that's one of the
Yeah,
big points. Once you kind of get
absolutely.
into the rooms in the house, you can create multiple service sets even and give them a whole different feel where you're cleaning the entire house one week and just certain rooms the other week, and you can get into rotational deep clean. So if they're getting multiple quotes, the other quotes are going to be, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. Can you clean our house? Yeah, we can clean your house, but you're giving them a whole different experience if you're quoting by rooms.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so
Heather,
sweet. Heather has let us know that we have a video from our owner Beth right in our bookings. We also send a ton of text that we personalize, and that's exactly what you want to do. Introducing them to the company in a personal way, like personalizing the business and also personalizing the service. There's lots of ways to do that, and I love to hear ways that people are using Made Central to do that. All right, so outside of, a person to person quoting, there's also other ways to quote as well. In the technological era that we're in, we also have online quoting. And I think it's very important to take into account that, our sales tips can be used in person, over the phone, and even an element of online quoting as well. Um, but on the other side, we have just online quoting where we're not able to kind of get some of those things in place, but there's a realm of our prospect base that online quoting is absolutely necessary for them to move forward with any service. We have this really interesting dichotomy happening between our prospects, are the people that we service. We've got people who want to really make that connection, feel really close to the people that are going to be coming into their home. They're the ones calling us that really want to have that longer, detailed, personalized conversation, to really feel comfortable with this decision that they're making and understanding what they're going to get out of it. And then on the other side, we almost have the exact opposite of people who are like, I don't have enough time to even think about half of this. I just know that I need this done right now. And I need to find somebody that I can do this at 3 o'clock in the, excuse me, at 3 o'clock in the morning and know that I've taken care of this off of my checklist. And online quoting is unbelievably beneficial in that process. Um, I mean, we've got all the benefits all right in front of you here, but it's convenient. It saves time. It saves your time, it saves their time. You can book people without any extra effort on your part. You get an improved accuracy and the fact that if you have all those factors really laid into the tool that you're using, um, there's no way that they can wiggle around that. They've got it's all set up in there, and you've taken into account all the things that you need to take into account to really get that accurate quote going, even in an online version. It's transparent. I I want to say who's the 80/20 guy, Tom?
Pareto, Pareto principle.
Maybe.
That's the 80/20 rule is the Pareto
Yeah.
principle.
I just remember, I don't remember what event it was or anything, but I remember one guy talking about, he had us all, raise our hands like, who who knows their competitors' prices? And pretty much
Mhm.
everybody raised their hand. We've all gone around and asked our competitor or figured out our competitors' prices. And then it's like, well, who has their pricing online? And almost nobody raised their hand, and they were like, well, why not? And the first answer was, well, I don't want my competitors to know what I'm doing. And it's like, we all already know. We all already are going around and getting secret shopper quotes from our competitors, and we know what their pricing is. Transparency is just as important for our customers though too. Sometimes the idea of house cleaning is so out of the realm of something that they thought that they could even afford. And if it's kind of hard to find that number and know maybe where they're going to be ballparking around, they might not even move forward with it because it's too much of an unknown to them. So transparency, having that number online, some people feel like they're giving too much couth to their competitors, but they already know. They already know what your
Mhm.
pricing is. They're already making decisions on that number. There's a lot of benefits on the prospect side with that transparency though.
And there's a whole cohort of Aja, you're one of them. You share your stories about how you buy services.
Oh yeah, and by cohort you mean millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yes, we've got millennials, professional millennials moving up into the area of their lives where house cleaning is a much more necessary thing. Me myself, when I was moving out of Kansas up here to North Dakota just recently, I needed a couple of services that needed to happen for me to move. I needed carpet cleaning, I needed my house cleaned, like a move out clean, and I needed like a handyman service, just to kind of go in and take care of any issues right after I left. And I was still working. I was in between a lot of business trips at the same time. I had a lot of things going on, and I kept forgetting to get quotes for carpet cleaning. And it just never, I never remembered it during business hours. It would never happen. So I, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up in the middle of the night and remembered I haven't booked carpet cleaning yet. And so I sat for 45 minutes at 3 o'clock in the morning and looked at all the carpet cleaners I could and narrowed it down to the 5 people that I could get a quote for online, and then narrowed it down to the only 3 people that I could get that I could book for online. And those were the only 3 people that even had a potential of getting my business, because I was not going to wait any longer. I needed it to get done right then. And even beyond that, I will not book any service for myself if I can't book it online. My doctor, my dog appointments, my service appointments, anything. If I can't book it online, I will not do it. I absolutely will not do it. I don't have the brain power to want to deal with that outside of, work. So there's many of us out there who will not book services if we can't book it online. So keep that in mind. It may not be the majority, and it may not be uh, you know, take over all of your sales processes, but every single sale that you can do online without taking other resources is potentially a sale that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So, um, having that 24/7 salesperson is literally priceless.
And
Awesome.
there's concerns that we hear. I mean, they're legitimate concerns about if you do online booking, how do you know that, you're really gonna be able to have the time slot available, or, if I'm, is there a chance I can overbook? And I mean, there's a lot of issues. What if they live in an
Yeah.
area that I don't service that day? And there are ways of handling all of those issues. And we've got a number of partners who figure those out, and we've learned a lot of things over the years as well. And don't have time to get into all that here, but Aja, we need to do another webinar just kind of talking about the implementation of online booking and
Yeah.
how
No,
do
I
you,
think there definitely could go further into that for sure.
yeah.
Really understanding, how to handle those situations. And sometimes, there's a lot of things. It's a whole other
Uh,
webinar. I'm not going
uh,
to go into it, but
the,
yes.
the short story is you can handle all of those things, and you're going to be better off for it, because 9 times out of 10 it just works perfectly. Occasionally it's a problem you have to work around, work through, make some changes, but there's solutions for that. And
Hmm.
you're going to be generating more revenue, you're going to be creating more revenue for, cleaning technician, you're going to be making more money if you go down that path, and accept the fact that occasionally I'm going to have to resolve something, but so what? You're still
Yeah,
you're going to grow your business in doing that.
absolutely. Um, Along this, some big oops, I keep hitting the wrong screen. A big part of like the online quoting is just really understanding that in your sales process, time is essential. Like leads go bad fast. They reach out to multiple people all at once. And honestly, more often than not, the first person that talks to them and makes them feel heard is the person that wins. Um, that's that's the short of it, honestly. It's just you want to really understand that that time is so important. There's a short period of time when they are ready to book, or they're ready to get that information, and when they're going to actually move forward with somebody. They're not a lot of people aren't going to wait to get all of the options. Some people do, but a lot of people are going to do the first one that seems feasible and gets back to them quickly. So if that's using online booking, that's probably a big part of it, but also just how do you follow up with things? What is your automation process? Or just your follow-up process. A lot of this you want to automate. I said automation. I gave away the punchline before I even asked the joke. So, but a lot of this is going to be automating this sales process. What are your lead follow-up options? We've got texts and emails, setting in reminders, having a good central history of all the communication that you've had with a lead. As much of this that you can automate, the better. We can help a lot with this at Made Central if you're currently using it, or if you're not yet. This is all stuff that you're able to do within Made Central, but it's very important that you have a process around this. And there are several ways to do this. So in Made Central, it looks, just kidding, I'm on the wrong page. So here's some follow-up. This is an example follow-up sequence of things that you might want to consider using texts and emails and reminders for. Some of this is happening simultaneously, and some of it is happening, in sequence. But you kind of want to think of, what does our follow-up process look at like in the first 2 weeks, and what does it look like after that? So this is just kind of an example here, but in the first 2 weeks here, we've tried to contact them 5 times in this example. Some of this, day 1 might be a email. Day 2 might be a text. Day 3 might be another phone call, and then another email, and then another phone call. There's lots of ways that you can do this, but really keeping in mind how often you're contacting them and making sure that they don't get just dropped off the face of the earth after that 2-week period. And there's lots of ways that you can manage this. I kind of broke this down in steps. So first option is manual tracking, creating literally just like a table that you're manually filling in. Here's the prospect's name, their phone number, what were they interested in? Okay, when did I call them first time? When did I call them the second time? When did I call them the third time? And you just kind of maintain a constant little flippy sheet of sales tracking. That's a really good option when you are the only person doing the sales. And maybe you're not at a place where you have the ability to use a lot of technology yet. So next step up is kind of a more simple automation, something that's just kind of like, hey, it's been, this many hours since we've contacted this person, and we haven't tried to contact them, at least 5 times yet. Do something. Give them a call. It doesn't have to be the same thing every time for every person, but hey, it's been this long since we've tried to contact them. Do you want to try again? Phone call, email, text, whatever one feels right for that customer. In Made Central, this is our sales dashboard that you're able to set up with some rules, and it just pulls those people back up onto a list for a salesperson to take control of and send an email, give them a call, something, just that it's been a little bit since we talked, and maybe they're ready to move forward with their quote. And then kind of the upper level of this follow-up method is having a full-on scheduled campaign, fully automating your emails and texts and reminders for your salespeople, that, as soon as a lead comes in, this is what happens. As soon as a quote is completed, an email gets sent out, and then it's, put on a timer that in 12 hours, it's going to send a text, and 15 hours, it's going to send an email. We can do this in Made Central. You can also do this in things that this is their entire purpose, like Keep or other, I think Go High Level is another option that people are using recently as well. But those are some things where they are fully automated, where you're just fully scheduling out what happens with these things during the process.
But if you want to stay within the Made Central ecosystem, we integrate with Keep and
We do.
And quite frankly, a lot of this functionality is native within Made Central. There's a lot you can do inside of Made Central in this regard.
Yeah, I always talk about it as, I actually stop here at 3 levels because we're talking about the sales thing, but it's like Made Central can cover all lead follow-up that you want for as long as you want it. You can have it go for years after they don't get a quote from you. You're still sending them emails every couple of months. You can make it as long as you want it to be. There's so much that you can do with leads and quotes, and there's no limitations on it. It's very much exactly what you can get and keep. But we do also integrate with Keep for other parts
Sure.
of the customer life cycle if you'd like to automate those, but that's a little bit of a different, we'll talk
Right.
about that in another webinar.
But as far as it gets to recurring sales per quote,
Hmm.
before even looking at another CRM, do a deep dive into what you can do inside of Made Central. I think,
Absolutely.
for a lot of us, I think that's all you really need.
And as an example, this is what it does kind of look like in Made Central. So we've got, this is just an external lead. So a lead came in, it's going to wait 5 minutes and it's going to remind somebody to give them a call. And then in a day, it's going to send them a text. And then in 15 minutes after that text is sent, it's going to remind somebody to give them a call. And this is just kind of in the first week, what's automated here on that lead process. Um, and then just kind of additional thing for our Made Central partners that are here. Um, these are some activities that you can do directly in Made Central to really drive that close rate up. We've talked about all of these during this, but just in case, actually, I missed a couple of them. So online booking, big one, having scheduled and automated campaigns set up. If you don't have that done yet, set up your sales dashboard. That's level one that you can do in Made Central, really getting your sales dashboard in place until your automated campaigns are created. Having consistent lead tracking. Where do people come from and where do they tend to book more? So we can get more people from that area. If your close rate's really low on people that are coming from Facebook, then maybe don't put so much effort into Facebook. But if your close rate is really high on people that came from next door, hey, maybe we need to put more stuff into next door because our close rate is really good for our next door leads. Having accurate availability settings. So we've got our availability calendar in Made Central, knowing what your technician efficiency is, setting your scope of work, and letting the system do its thing and subtracting available hours based off of technician availability. That's huge. Knowing when you are available and being able to get it onto the schedule quickly. That's, again, just another piece of the process that you can remove some friction on. We talked about the videos and images where possible. A place that you can put this is on the online quoting tool in your marketing text. You can put videos in there and pictures in there to kind of help personalize that online experience. Some of those things that you might want to talk about or elephants that come up during a sales call that you might want to bring up still in the quoting process or the sales process, you can do that online with a video. That you can have that really honest kind of conversation with somebody without actually talking to them, but giving them the chance to hear that part of the conversation. And then utilizing discount codes as well. Giving people a discount code, a week after they ask for a quote. Hey, if you're still interested, here's 10% off that first clean, or $20 off your first 5 cleans, or whatever thing you might want to do to help entice them to really close that deal. And then if you have multiple salespeople, really, really awesome tool that you should be using is the Kanban boards. Having separate ticket sales or sales tickets, sorry, just mixing up words here, having separate sales, so your sales tickets separated out so that you can kind of assign those out to different salespeople. So they know exactly which ones they're covering. And there's no overlap of accidentally calling somebody twice or not calling somebody at all on the even worse. And then finally, don't forget, all of these core KPIs are things that you can be improving on. So we're talking about close rate here. This is some example data on our core KPI.madecentral.com in the growth comparison tool. I, put in some sample data for fairly close to a real company and only increased our close rate 25%. So from 15% close rate to 18.75% close rate, still only half of that first quartile, 37% that we're seeing. And that has a $40,000 change on the end of year outcomes. So at the end of the year, if we're able to get our close rate up to 18.75 in this business, that's a $40,000 improvement. So little changes can have really big results. And that's a difference of closing one extra person every like 2 weeks or something like that. Like that's not a huge increase on that close rate. So anything that you can do to kind of bump that up can have really big results in your bottom line.
If you haven't signed up an account here yet, again, it's free to do that. And you can take your core KPIs and plug it in here. You can put together an action plan around core KPIs that you're working on, and you can actually see where your business will be in the future. I mean, this is forecasting, this is predictable
Hmm.
outcomes. You can make your business better by taking advantage of that tool.
Absolutely. This is stuff that, Fortune 500 companies do. They have forecasting tools constantly being utilized of if we make this improvement, this is what it's going to look like at the end of the year and being able to sell their business on that. So this is stuff that we don't see a lot in our industry, but is absolutely something we can apply to this industry. And then our core KPI calendar, if you do not have one yet, definitely let us know. I will show you if you email mail@madecentral.com, that's on our last slide, so you don't have to write it down now, but you can email us if you want to receive a calendar and we can get this sent over to you. I think we still have a couple, right?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Okay, good. Just making
And
sure. I'm like, am I
we're
giving away things we don't have?
and we're gonna bring some to the MCA Live event in April as well, up in
Absolutely. So
DC.
we have our core KPI of the month, and that month that KPI matches what we're doing in the webinar. We do the webinar the first week of the month for a reason. It's, to focus on that KPI this month. If we're able to improve every KPI, every core KPI, a modicum amount by just focusing on it for a month, we will all be in significantly better places at the end of the year. So you can focus on this for the next 30 days and maybe make that 1 to 2% improvement on your close rate and see a decent amount of results from that at the end of the year. Don't forget about foundations. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. I am unbelievably excited to be going as an educator at the event. I have wanted to go to foundations since the first time I heard about it, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It is an incredible experience. It is probably the most in-depth um, training experience that you can get as a business owner, really breaking down every aspect of your business that you can, and being surrounded by other people that have similar challenges or maybe different challenges that you haven't had yet. There's so much to be gained from this. So if you're curious, if you're interested, reach out to us. I'd love to see more faces there, as many as I can.
Coreprofitbuilders.com is where you can get more information as well. And
Yep.
still have a couple slots available.
Yes, we do. All right. And then our MCA Live in DC as well. And that is going to be at madecentral.academy. Or you can see all of these at madecentral.com/events. All of our upcoming events, as well as our webinars, are here for the calendars. You can email us at mail@madecentral.com. And then that resources page was corekpi.madecentral.com. So that kind of concludes it. We got 2 minutes to spare. That was good timing. Any other questions? Heather, you're great. I really appreciate all the feedback you've been giving. Heather,
Heather,
you've
you
been awesome.
rock.
You rock.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us.
Thank you for being so participating. I love it. I love it. I love it. One of the things that's hard with webinars is you don't get a lot of visual feedback from people. So you're helping me a ton. I really appreciate it. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for spending an hour of your day with us. And I hope you learned some really great things and maybe some things that you can try in the next month to improve your close rate. And we'll see you guys next month for cleanings per home per month, which is a very long title because we do things that way at Made Central. But
The way we
I
roll.
hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.